As roguelikes have been increasing in popularity, I almost want to say that the genre is oversaturated. But then I don't say that because roguelikes are awesome. Finding a good roguelike is a very happy tragedy. Sure, you're gonna have a wonderful time, but unfortunately, you're gonna have to cancel all of your plans indefinitely. Forever. And every now and again, you stumble upon a roguelike that is just ridiculous. When the developers of Warm Snow asked me if I wanted to check out their roguelike, I looked at the Steam page and immediately felt dumb. Because not only is this a really good roguelike, but it's also incredibly popular and somehow just slipped under my radar. That's kind of embarrassing. Roguelikes are my thing. Warm Snow is a game that has consumed my life. From the hand-drawn art style, the insane level of build depth and variety, and also absolutely ridiculous bosses. I'm so stoked to be able to sit down and introduce some of you to this brutal masterpiece, but when I say brutal, I mean capitalize every single letter. Thank you so much, Warm Snow, for sponsoring today's video. Now please, let me tell you about this game. Warm Snow is a roguelike that I can only describe as Hades, but the builds are on steroids, and the bosses are genuinely quite cruel. In fact, I normally do these sort of roguelike review videos by doing a 3-run challenge, seeing if I could get to the end of the game in just 3 runs. But Warm Snow has some of the meanest boss fights I've played in a very long time. I'll dedicate a section of this video to boss fights in general, because they're all pretty unique and I feel that they deserve time in the spotlight, but first I want to run down some basic mechanics. Warm Snow plays like a traditional top-down action roguelike. You have your basic buttons like dashing, healing, and attacking, but you also have your flying swords, which serve as your secondary source of damage. These are pretty complicated, but they also open up the genre to be so much more. Basically, you have 2 more buttons, your throw ability and your recall ability. You have a limited amount of swords, which you can pelt into whatever enemies you'd like, and when your recall ability is available, you can sheath all of them and they do damage to every enemy in their path, which allows for some very satisfying gameplay so long as you position correctly. You can get random enhancements in your run, like doing more damage to the enemy based on how many swords are stuck in them, or increasing your damage output based on how few swords you currently have available. I know what you may be thinking, that doesn't sound so complicated, is this guy stupid or something? But what if I told you that in the beginning of each run, you can choose 1 out of 10 separate styles that completely change what your character does? Maybe you're someone who likes to pick their shots and deal damage from a safe distance. Well now, instead of having multiple swords you can recall, you have 1 giant laser sword turret that deals burst damage if you time the button press correctly. And instead of recalling, you can buff your laser crit to become a machine gun for a few seconds. Maybe you're like me and you don't really care about being safe as long as you could look cool while dealing damage. Why not eliminate your ranged abilities altogether and replace it with a chain lightning that procs every single time you dash? Each of the 10 styles have 2 separate main perks that play differently as well. Also, since this is a roguelike, every single one of the stances available come with their own unique upgrades you can find to make them better, allowing your laser beams to auto crit for a few seconds, letting your lightning chain to opponents, or giving a zone around your character that microwaves anyone stupid enough to stand within striking distance. Without even mentioning the rest of the mechanics in this game, 10 incredibly unique styles, each with their own perks, is already more content than 90% of roguelikes that exist. But in Warm Snow, we're barely scratching the surface. It's a roguelike after all, build versatility is kind of the point. In every single run, you can find a weapon and 4 unique relics that evolve the way your build comes together. Weapons each have their own synergy with specific relics if you're lucky enough to find the combinations, but relics have 4 separate uses. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Relics can each be used in 4 different ways. Depending on which slot you equip your relic, it will have its own unique passive or active ability, and you could swap it around whenever you need to. Yeah, I told you, there is a lot going on. Now that we've explained all the basic mechanics, I think it'd be fun to show you 3 separate builds I tried that play very unique from one another, while also showcasing some of the most insane boss fights I've ever had to deal with. The first build is with the most basic set in the game, the 7-sword Shura, that allows you to throw your blades and recall them for big damage. The 7-sword playstyle is basically all about lowering your sheath cooldown, and positioning your blades in spots where the recall would hit as many enemies as possible. This was one of the earlier builds I played, so I wasn't too confident with my level of play just yet. I progressed through the first section dealing damage and being as safe as I can while finding any way to enhance my swords. I find an Inkfire crystal which gives all of my damage 15% chance to deal fire damage, and then we fight the first boss, but this guy is kind of like a tutorial character. You face him within like a minute of your run, so the word boss is kind of doing some heavy lifting. We kill a white wolf and find a ghostly strand which makes burning enemies heal me, and I've played a lot of roguelikes. Healing is essential if you are ass, and unfortunately, I sure am. We get a sect skill which evolves the style of your character, and since we're doing the sword recall style, I get an upgrade which makes me do an AoE spin whenever I pick a sword up off the ground. Then I find a mechanical case which gives me a shield whenever I recall my blades. Shields are so overpowered in any game ever. I will not be arguing about this, it is a fact. Moving on. We find another sect upgrade which just flat out gives me 80% attack speed, and I honestly just can't believe it. That's a lot of attack speed. We kind of blitz through the stage and find a dragon bone which specifically synergizes with lightning builds, but since I don't have lightning, it's useless in every single slot except for agility, where it gives me more move speed. Then we find blood serpent flying swords, which makes me shoot blood serpents every time I kill an enemy, and it just feels great. We find 2 mechanical bazookas which shoot rockets when I do stuff randomly, and honestly, hell yeah. Then we fight the Twisted Boar Hag, which is the real first half boss of the game, because every stage has 2 bosses of varying complexity. With her conquered and my confidence building, we gain a perk that gives us bonus damage every time we kill an enemy, and an epic sword which gives me bonus damage on enemies that are burning. Since I have these random bazookas, this is good. We progress through the first dungeon and my blood serpents are just so satisfying. I mean, look at that. We get to the shop before the first major boss, and she's just the baddest woman I have ever seen in my life. Sign me all the way up. We fight the first actual boss, the Patriarch of Boar, aka Sonic the Hedgehog after bulking for about 47 years, and he has a dash attack, a combo, and a belly splash. He's also kind of tanky, but with some well-timed dodges, I'm able to get him out of there in just a couple of combos. And honestly, that was kind of easy. He runs away, but then he comes back as a giant. Yeah, it's the first boss and we're already doing kaijus. Now, a quick funny thing to say about this boss, you know how I always do my 3-run challenges whenever I play a new roguelike? This guy is single-handedly the reason why I decided not to do that, because at the point of this recording, he already killed me twice. Once by doing a blood laser which removed half of my health bar, and the other time by doing a one-shot ability, where he sucks you into his mouth, and if you're not ready for it, you die instantly. I told you, this game is mean. But being wise to all of his tricks, I managed to beat him with barely any health left. Like, if he even sniffed me, I would keel over. With Patriarch Boar defeated, we head into stage 2. Now, I'm going to swap things up and focus specifically on boss fights because I think that they're all pretty awesome, while also showing off new builds. The major boss for stage 2 is insane, and the build I'd like to show off for it is the Sunbreaker, aka the laser turret. This build is specifically about keeping your distance and dealing as much damage as you can while being safe. I structure my build around shielding and healing because I figured as long as I could stay healthy, I'll be able to breeze through the opponents. Basically, with this build, if an enemy gets within my area code, they get sent straight to hell, which is hilarious. We reached the major boss of this zone called the Matriarch of Crane, and she was the moment that I realized all of the bosses in this game were going to be bananas. She blocks out the sun and creates a red sky, which is ultra kill levels of badass. Her main mechanic is also really cool. Basically, she plays from a range too, and she throws fireballs at you. But when her health starts to dwindle, every fireball she throws becomes an expanding black hole that will kill you. And then, get this, you're saved by your companion character who can literally freeze time for a few seconds, which is just long enough for you to break the black holes and save yourself. It's just so cool to look at. I was so blown away the first time I saw it. Oh yeah, she also has a phase 2 where she becomes the Black Sun, which is another kaiju where you have to destroy these eyeballs while also dodging attacks that take up more than half the screen. Yeah, this is just the second boss, man. Fortunately, our ranged ability makes it easier to survive, so after a bit of dodges, I managed to eliminate her and move forward. The next major boss we face is the Heart of All Things, a gigantic robot that basically rolls a dice, and depending on which element is chosen, you have another thing to worry about in battle, spawning tornadoes, lightning, ice balls, spikes, or whatever else. You have to destroy 4 turrets in order to make the core show up, and every time you damage it, he rolls again and adds another thing for you to worry about. And after a few cracks at it, it eventually breaks. But this is Warm Snow, so obviously we're not done. And after defeating phase 1, he becomes a mech? Is there anything else we have to fight, man? Unlike the other boss fights though, this one is a lot more self-explanatory, just dodging and shooting. I'd even say that phase 2 for this one is easier than phase 1. Still, it looks really cool. Now, as we reach the 2 final bosses of the game, I would like to swap builds again to my favorite build that I've done, the Lightning build, where I remove my ranged abilities to deal lightning damage on my dash. This build deals a ton of damage, while also being a lot more dangerous since you're always in their face. I also love this build because the wave clear in the stages is absolutely insane. I mean, just look at this. It's so satisfying. The main boss of stage 5 is genuinely quite hard, but also really straightforward. He's just this war general guy who combos the hell out of you and is very fast. Hilariously, he also blocks projectiles, but Lightning build doesn't really have to worry about that. It's interesting because though this boss fight isn't as grand as the others, he always has me sweating due to the sheer size and speed of his attacks. Still, I learned his timing by now, and Lightning build is pretty fast, so my hit and run style was easy to pull off. With him killed, I head into the final boss of the run. Here's where I have to hit you with some lore. At the point of this run, I have actually faced the final boss twice. The first time, I wasn't able to beat him because I basically didn't have enough damage to do so. The second time, I was dominating him, but hilariously, the 5th boss of this game has a one-shot ability. A one-shot ability! So this was my 3rd time facing him, and I was nervous as hell. The Dragon Emperor is ridiculous. He has a sword that he could swap out, and all of them do their own thing. He could dash at you from afar incredibly fast, and he can teleport and slash you with an AoE that takes up a portion of your screen. As he gets lower, he starts to summon more swords which all attack you at the same time, and he does this attack where every sword on the perimeter tries to hit you as well. Yeah, what is that? Finally, when he gets mad, everything he is already doing gets faster, bigger, and stronger. And he also has that one-shot ability that makes my heart sink whenever I see him try it. Still, the lightning build is very, very strong. Also, when I say one-shot, I mean one-shot. Even if you build things that will give you like an extra life, it'll kill you. I learned that the hard way. So after successfully dodging that one specific attack, I blitz him down and kill him using everything I have. And with that, I beat Warm Snow for the first time ever. But you want to know something insane? The DLC of this game, which can be accessed once you win a run, has an entirely new set of stages and bosses, which take place years after the first set. I'd love to show you these bosses, but I keep getting one-shotted by the first major boss. They also added a stat tree with equipment meta progression, which genuinely changes everything, and I am just so blown away by how much content this game has. When you beat the main story, you unlock the first DLC with 5 new bosses, and the second DLC, End of Karma, is now live on iOS and Android. Warm Snow is currently up to 30% off on all platforms, so what are you waiting for? Now I'm gonna lock back in and try to beat the DLC. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you, Warm Snow, for sponsoring the content. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.